The great dragon emperor had been away for a long time. His armies marched far across the borders, fighting endless battles against enemies who wanted to crush his empire. The people of his land believed their ruler would not return for many months, maybe even years. War was cruel and slow, and everyone thought the emperor would only come back once all threats were destroyed. But fate decided otherwise. The battles ended much sooner than expected. The enemy, strong and proud at first, broke down under the fire of the emperor's armies. Their kings bent the knee. Their soldiers surrendered. The war was over. The emperor stood on the field of victory, the wind carrying the smell of smoke and iron. Around him, his generals celebrated. His soldiers raised their weapons high. But the emperor's eyes were calm, thoughtful, and distant. He had won, yes, but he did not feel the same joy as his men. Something else weighed on his mind. He did not announce his return. He did not send messages to the capital. No heralds, no drums, no banners. Instead, he decided to travel in silence, with only a handful of trusted guards. He wanted to see his empire with his own eyes, to see how it lived without him. The journey was long, but his mind stayed sharp. Along the way, he noticed things that disturbed him. Villages near the borders seemed too quiet. Farmers bowed, but their eyes were filled with worry. Markets in small towns whispered with strange rumors. That the emperor would never return. That new powers were rising in the palace. That the throne was no longer safe. The emperor said nothing, but he listened carefully. Each word of gossip was like a small piece of a puzzle. He kept all of it in his heart. At last, the great capital appeared before him. Tall towers rose above the city walls, shining under the sun. The palace stood proud at the center, built with white stone and golden roofs that caught the light. To any traveler, it looked like a place of peace and strength. But the emperor, sitting tall on his horse, felt something else. The palace looked the same, but it no longer felt the same. He entered the city quietly, covering himself with a plain cloak. No trumpets, no soldiers marching in rows. The people did not recognize him. To them, he was just another traveler. He passed through the crowded streets, and what he saw made his chest heavy. Some shops were closed. Some homes looked broken. Men whispered in corners. Women hushed their children when soldiers walked by. The empire was alive, but there was tension, like a string pulled too tight. When the emperor finally reached the palace gates, he dismissed most of his guards. Only one followed him inside. The guards at the gate did not recognize their ruler under the cloak. They let him pass after only a quick glance. The emperor shook his head. Once, the palace guards would never have been so careless. Something had changed in his absence. The great halls of the palace were empty. His footsteps echoed on the stone floors. Torches burned dimly along the walls, their flames weak and tired. He passed through the corridors he had known since his youth, but now they felt unfamiliar, almost cold. The emperor's heart beat faster. He had returned earlier than anyone expected. No one knew he was back. This was his chance to see the truth, what happened behind his back, when everyone thought the emperor was far away. As he walked deeper into the palace, the silence grew heavier. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of secrets. He moved like a shadow, listening, watching, searching, and then he heard it. First, it was faint, almost too soft to notice. A sound, like someone speaking quietly. His sharp ears caught the rhythm of words, though he could not hear them clearly. The sound came from the direction of his private chambers, the one place no servant dared to enter without his permission. The emperor stopped. His breath slowed. His eyes narrowed. Who would dare to enter his chambers while he was away? He moved carefully, every step silent. His cloak brushed against the wall as he approached. The voices grew clearer now. It was not many voices, only one. A woman's voice. He recognized it. It was his maid. She had been his servant for many years. Loyal, quiet, always obedient. She was human, fragile compared to the dragon-blooded nobles of his court. But he had trusted her, for her eyes had always shown honesty. She had cared for his chambers when no one else was allowed near them. She had prepared his robes, his meals, his letters. She was like a shadow in his daily life, always present, yet never seen. But now, she was speaking in his chambers, alone. The emperor pressed himself against the wall, his eyes sharp as blades. He peered through the narrow gap of the half-open door. What he saw made his chest tighten. The maid stood in the center of the room. The curtains were drawn, the lamps lit low. In her hands, she held something that glowed faintly with blue light. It was not an ordinary object. Pulsed like a living heart. The emperor frowned. That object, he had seen it before. Long ago, it was sealed in the deepest vault of the palace. It was a relic of the old empire, a thing of power and danger. How did she have it? The maid whispered words he did not understand. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. She was not cleaning. She was not working. She was doing something forbidden. The emperor's heart pounded. Had she betrayed him? Or was she hiding something much larger than betrayal? The maid suddenly stopped, clutching the glowing object tightly. Her eyes darted around the room, as if she feared someone was watching. And then, she spoke words that froze the emperor's blood. "Forgive me," she whispered to the object. "He must never know the truth." The emperor's grip tightened on his cloak. His eyes burned with suspicion and fury. What truth? What was she hiding from him? For the first time since his return, the great dragon emperor felt something he had not felt in years. Not anger, not pride, not even fear. He felt the weight of a secret. And he knew in that moment that his early return had uncovered something far more dangerous than any war. The emperor did not move. He stood by the door, silent as stone, his eyes fixed on the maid inside his private chamber. Her hands trembled as she held the glowing object. The light pulsed softly, throwing strange shadows on the walls. Every flicker of that light made the emperor's heart beat harder. He had seen many things in his life, battlefields filled with fire, blades that cut through armor, sorcery from distant lands. But this was different. The maid's lips moved again. She spoke words in a low whisper, words the emperor could not understand. It was not the common tongue. It was not the ancient language of the dragons. It was something older, something hidden. The emperor leaned closer, his breath controlled, his presence hidden. His sharp eyes studied every detail. The way her fingers curled, the way her face twisted with fear, the way her body seemed smaller under the weight of the secret she carried. At last, the maid stopped. She lowered her hands, still clutching the glowing relic, to her chest. For a moment, the light dimmed, almost as if the object itself had gone to sleep. The emperor thought she would put it away, hide it, maybe even destroy it. But then she did something that sent a shiver down his spine. She knelt on the floor. She bowed her head, and she spoke again, this time in the common tongue. "Great One," she whispered, "I beg you, protect him. Do not let him know the truth." Not yet. The emperor's jaw tightened. Protect him? Who was she talking to? And what truth was she hiding from him? For the first time in years, the emperor felt truly uncertain. He was a man who had crushed kingdoms, who had bent armies to his will, who had never feared a rival. But here, in his own palace, he felt something strange, a shadow creeping into his heart. The maid suddenly lifted her head, her eyes darting toward the door. The emperor froze, his body pressed against the cold wall. Had she sensed him? Could she feel his presence? For a long, tense moment, she stared at the door. Her breathing quickened, her fingers tightening on the relic. Then, slowly, she turned back, set the glowing object on the table, and pulled a cloth over it. The light disappeared. The room sank into silence. The emperor stepped back, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to enter, to confront her, to demand answers. But another part of him, the sharper, wiser part, told him to wait, to watch, to understand before acting. He moved away from the door, walking silently through the corridor. His cloak swirled behind him like a shadow. The maid had betrayed his trust, or so it seemed. But was betrayal the only answer? Or was there something greater at play? As he walked deeper into the palace, he began to notice more things. Candles burned in rooms where no one should be. Footsteps echoed in distant halls. Voices whispered in corners, stopping suddenly when he passed by. The palace, his palace, was alive with secrets. He turned into another corridor and paused. From the shadows, he watched two servants speaking in hushed tones. "Have you heard?" One whispered. "They say he will never return. The throne. It will soon belong to another." The other servant shook his head nervously. "Do not say such things. If the wrong ears hear you." "But it's true," the first hissed. "The generals, the nobles, they are already making plans. And the maid. She knows more than she should." The emperor's eyes narrowed. He stepped back before the servants could notice him. His chest tightened. So the rumors were true. While he fought and bled for the empire, others had already begun to prepare for his fall. But who were they? Which nobles? Which generals? And what role did the maid play in all of this? He returned to the shadows, his mind sharper than ever. He had returned earlier than anyone expected, and now he saw the palace not as a place of loyalty, but as a web of lies. Every corner hid whispers. Every whisper carried a threat. The emperor made his way back toward his private chambers, careful not to be seen. When he arrived, the door was closed, the light inside gone. The maid was gone as well. He entered the room slowly, his eyes scanning every detail. The air smelled faintly of smoke, the kind left behind by burned candles. The table where the relic had been placed was empty. She had taken it with her. The emperor's hands clenched into fists. She had hidden the object again, perhaps in another part of the palace, perhaps somewhere he would not find so easily. He stood in the middle of the room, silent, his breath heavy. The walls felt colder now, the silence heavier. His chambers, once the safest place in the empire, now felt like a stranger's room. At last, he turned and looked toward the great window. Outside, the capital stretched endlessly, lights flickering across the city. To the people, the emperor was still far away, still lost in war. They did not know he had returned. They did not know he now walked among shadows, seeking truth. And perhaps, they did not want him to know the truth either. The emperor's eyes burned with quiet fury. He had survived wars, he had crushed enemies, but this was something different. This was not a battle fought with swords. This was a battle fought with secrets. And the first secret lay in the hands of a human maid who had once been nothing more than a servant. He whispered to himself, his voice low but sharp as steel. "No one hides the truth from me. Not in my empire. Not in my palace." His eyes turned toward the dark corridors outside his chamber. He knew what he had to do. He would not reveal his return, not yet. He would move in silence. He would uncover every lie, every betrayal, every shadow that dared to grow in his absence. The emperor stepped into the hallway once more. His cloak dragged across the stone floor. His steps were slow, deliberate, powerful. But deep inside, he could not forget the maid's words. Protect him. Do not let him know the truth. Not yet. The words echoed in his mind like a curse. Who was protecting him? From what? And what truth was so terrible that even his most trusted servant feared to reveal it? The shadows of the palace held their secrets close. But the emperor had returned. And soon those shadows would have nowhere left to hide. The emperor did not sleep that night. He sat in the darkness of his chamber, his cloak still on his shoulders, his sword resting by his side. The flicker of a single candle painted sharp shadows on the walls. His eyes, golden and unblinking, stared at the flame, but his thoughts were far away. The words of the maid repeated again and again in his mind. Protect him. Do not let him know the truth. Not yet. The emperor clenched his fist. Who was she talking to? And what truth was she hiding? By dawn, his decision was made. He would follow her. When the palace began to stir with the morning, he left his chamber quietly, covering himself once again in his plain cloak. Servants bustled through the halls, carrying food and water. Nobles strolled with proud faces, pretending all was well. But the emperor walked among them unseen, his presence hidden, his steps silent. He waited until he saw her. The maid appeared in the corridor, her head lowered, her hands carrying a small basket. To the other servants, she looked ordinary, just another worker performing her duties. But the emperor's sharp eyes noticed something. Her basket was too heavy for simple bread or cloth. Her steps were careful, guarded. She was hiding something. He followed. She moved through the palace quickly, always looking over her shoulder, always checking if anyone watched. She did not know that the sharpest eyes of all were already upon her. At last, she entered a part of the palace that few dared to go, the old library. The emperor frowned. That place had been sealed years ago. Ancient books lined the walls, filled with knowledge so dangerous that only the royal family was allowed to touch them. Yet the maid slipped inside as if she belonged there. He followed, his steps silent. The library smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. Tall shelves rose like walls, the dim light barely reaching their tops. The maid moved between them, her basket pressed close to her chest. She stopped at a corner of the library, where a stone table stood. Upon it were candles, already melted low, their wax dripping like frozen tears. She set down her basket and pulled out the relic. The emperor's heart tightened. The object glowed again, its faint blue light casting eerie shadows across the old books. The maid lit the candles, one by one, circling the table. The air grew heavier with each flame, the silence thicker. Then, she began to chant. The words were the same strange language he had heard before, sharp and flowing, older than the empire itself. Her voice was soft but steady, as if she had practiced many times. The relic pulsed in rhythm with her voice. The glow grew brighter, spreading across the table like veins of light. Ancient symbols carved into the stone began to shine. The emperor's eyes widened. He knew those markings. He had seen them once, long ago, in the hidden archives of his ancestors. They were symbols of protection, not for a kingdom, not for an army, but for a single person. For him, the emperor's mind raced. Why would a maid, a servant with no power, no bloodline, no claim, no such ancient magic? How had she even learned it? Her voice rose, the chant growing faster. The relic shook in her hands, as if alive. The light filled the library now, painting the shelves in a ghostly glow. And then she whispered words that struck him like a blade. He must be shielded from the ones who walk in shadows. He must not know, until the time is right. The emperor's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. Rage burned inside him. How dare she speak of him like this? How dare she decide what he should or should not know? He stepped forward, ready to reveal himself. But just as he moved, something else happened. The light from the relic shot upward, forming a shape in the air. It twisted, shimmered, and then became clear. A figure cloaked in darkness, its face hidden, its voice deep and cold. "Have you prepared him?" the figure asked. The maid bowed low, her voice trembling. "Not yet." He returned earlier than expected. "He does not know." The emperor froze. His chest pounded like a war drum. The maid was not alone in this. She was speaking to someone or something through the relic. The figure's shadowy face tilted. "Then you must continue the ritual. If he learns too soon, all will be lost." The maid nodded quickly. "I understand." The figure faded, the light dimming until only the relic's soft glow remained. The maid slumped forward, her body shaking with exhaustion. She pressed the relic against her chest, whispering, "I will protect him, even if it costs me everything." The emperor's fury battled with his confusion. Protect him? From what? From whom? And why should a mere maid hold the power of secrets that even he, the ruler of dragons, did not know? His first instinct was to step out, to drag her from the library, to demand every answer. But he held back. His years as a ruler, as a warrior, had taught him one thing. Knowledge was power, and he needed more of it before striking. He turned and slipped away, his steps soundless. Back in the corridors, his thoughts churned. The maid was no ordinary servant. The relic was no ordinary object. And the shadows whispering in the palace were no ordinary rumors. The emperor clenched his jaw. He had uncovered something dangerous, something buried deep within his own empire. He could not yet see its full shape, but he could feel it pressing closer, like a storm waiting to break. For now, he would watch. He would wait, and when the truth finally revealed itself, he would be ready. But one question burned in his heart, refusing to leave him. The emperor had waited long enough. For 2 days he watched in silence. He followed the maid through the palace halls, always staying hidden in shadows. He saw her enter forbidden places, carrying the relic, chanting her strange words. Each time, she grew weaker, her face pale, her hands shaking, yet she never stopped. The emperor's fury burned hotter with each passing hour. His own servant was performing secret rituals in his palace, speaking to shadows, keeping truths from him. And worst of all, she dared to speak as though he was the one who needed her protection. He had heard enough. On the 3rd night, when the moon hung low and silver above the palace, he decided it was time. The maid entered his private chamber, carrying the relic once again. She placed it on the table, her trembling hands lighting the candles around it. Her lips began to move, chanting those same forbidden words. The emperor stepped forward. His cloak slipped from his shoulders. His heavy boots struck the stone floor. His golden eyes blazed like fire. The maid froze. Her head turned slowly. Her eyes widened. The relic slipped from her hands and landed with a dull thud on the table. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then she dropped to her knees. Her body shook, her face pale as death. "Your Majesty," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Forgive me." The emperor's voice was low and sharp, like the edge of a blade. "You dare to touch what is forbidden. You dare to speak words that even kings fear. Tell me now, why should I not strike you down where you kneel?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she lifted her face, desperate. "Please, I did not betray you. I only wished to protect you." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "Protect me? From what? From whom? Speak the truth, or I will have your tongue." The maid pressed her hands to the floor, bowing deeply. Her voice trembled but carried a strange strength. "There are forces inside this palace, my lord. Forces that wish to see you dead. They think you will never return. They are plotting in the dark, waiting to take your throne." The emperor's jaw tightened. His heart raged with fury. He had suspected betrayal, but to hear it confirmed from the lips of his own servant made the fire inside him burn hotter. "And what role do you play in this treachery?" he demanded. The maid shook her head wildly. "No, I am not one of them. I serve you and only you." "The relic?" She hesitated, then placed her hand over it. "The relic shows me what they plan. It warns me of their shadows. Without it, I could not protect you." The emperor stepped closer, towering over her. "And why should I believe the words of a maid? You are no sorcerer. You are no noble. How do you know such things?" Her lips trembled. She looked up at him with desperate eyes. "Because I was chosen, not by men, not by lords, but by the relic itself. When you left for war, I found it calling to me. I do not know why. I only know that it revealed the truth. And that truth, your Majesty." Her voice broke. "That truth is that your enemies are closer than you think." The emperor's hand moved to his sword. For a moment, the room felt as if it would shatter with violence. The maid closed her eyes, bracing herself for the strike. But the sword did not move. Instead, the emperor leaned down, his burning eyes locked on hers. His voice was cold as steel. "If you are lying, I will make your death slow. If you are telling the truth, then you have seen something even I have not." The maid's breath shook. "I would never lie to you, my lord." For a long silence, they stared at one another, the ruler of dragons and the trembling servant who held secrets far beyond her station. Finally, the emperor turned away. He paced the room, his heavy steps echoing off the stone walls. "Which of my nobles?" he asked at last. "Which generals plot against me? Speak their names." The maid swallowed hard. She lowered her head. "I cannot see them clearly. Their faces are hidden. But their voices, I know them. Powerful men. Men you once trusted. The emperor's rage flared. Trusted. His fist slammed down on the table, the relic trembling under the force. I spilled blood for this empire while they plotted in my halls. They will regret their treachery. The maid flinched at his fury but quickly spoke again. Please, Majesty, you must be careful. They believe you are still far from the capital. They will not expect you so soon. If you reveal yourself now, they will strike in desperation. But if you stay silent, you can watch them, learn their plans, and then destroy them when the time is right. The emperor turned slowly, his golden eyes burning into hers. You presume to give me counsel? The maid bowed lower, pressing her forehead to the floor. I only wish to save your life. Silence filled the chamber once more. The emperor's hand hovered near his sword, but he did not draw it. His fury battled with reason. She could still be lying. She could still be part of the plot. And yet, something in her voice, something in her trembling devotion, made him pause. At last he spoke. You live for now, but if you betray me, I will end you with my own hands. The maid pressed her hands tightly against the floor. I will never betray you, Majesty, even if it costs me everything. The emperor stared at her for a long time. His chest rose and fell slowly. The fire inside him had not faded, but it now burned with a new purpose. He would not reveal his return, not yet. He would watch as she suggested. He would let the traitors show their faces. And then he would strike. A sudden sound broke the tense silence. Footsteps, heavy and steady, echoing down the corridor. The emperor's eyes snapped toward the door. His hand went to his sword. The maid gasped, quickly grabbing the relic and covering it with a cloth. The door creaked open, and a high-ranking official stepped inside, his voice smooth and filled with false warmth. Your Majesty, I did not expect you back so soon. The emperor's rage froze into cold calm. He smiled faintly, masking the storm burning within him. At last, the shadows began to show their faces. The emperor stood tall as the chamber doors opened. His golden eyes narrowed, but his face showed only calm control. A high-ranking official walked in, dressed in fine robes, his steps heavy with arrogance. This man was Lord Vaynar, one of the most powerful nobles in the empire. He had once sworn loyalty to the throne, kissing the emperor's hand before the court. Now he entered the room as if it already belonged to him. My emperor, Vaynar said with a smooth smile, bowing deeply. What a surprise. We thought you would not return for many months. To see you alive and well. It is a joy beyond words. The emperor's lips curved into a faint smile, hiding the storm within him. Yes, he said, his voice steady. The war ended earlier than expected. I decided to come home quietly. The maid remained on her knees, her head bowed, her trembling hidden behind her hair. Vaynar's sharp eyes flicked toward her, then back to the emperor. Ah, he said softly. Your little servant, always so loyal. I trust she has kept your chambers clean in your absence. The emperor's gaze did not waver. Yes, she has served well. The words were calm, but beneath them was a warning. Vaynar bowed again, but his smile did not fade. Forgive me, Majesty. I should have gathered the council at once to celebrate your return. But since you came unannounced, perhaps you wished for privacy first. The emperor tilted his head slightly. Privacy, yes. But soon the council will know. I want to see who among them truly welcomes me back. Vaynar's eyes glimmered for a brief moment. Then he bowed again. As you wish, my emperor. When he left, the chamber fell silent. The maid raised her head, her face pale. That man, she whispered, her voice shaking. He is one of them. His voice is among the shadows I hear in the relic. He plots against you. The emperor's jaw tightened. He had already suspected. Now he knew for certain. But he would not act yet. Not until he saw how far the poison had spread. The next morning, the emperor entered the grand hall. The council of nobles and generals had been summoned. Word of his return spread like wildfire through the palace. Servants whispered, Guards stiffened, and nobles dressed in haste to present themselves. The great doors opened, and all eyes turned toward him. The emperor walked with slow, steady steps, his presence filling the hall. His golden eyes swept across the room, reading every face. Some showed surprise, some fear, some false joy. He recognized all of it. Lord Vaynar stood at the front, bowing deeply, his voice loud and smooth. "Behold, our emperor has returned victorious. Truly, the gods have blessed us with his safe arrival." The nobles echoed weak applause, their claps thin and hollow. The emperor's eyes caught their unease. He knew their hearts did not match their words. He sat upon the dragon throne, the golden seat carved with the shapes of wings and fire. From this place he had ruled the empire. Now he sat in silence, studying the men and women before him. "My lords," he said at last, his voice cold and sharp, "the war is ended. The enemy kneels before us. I return to find my empire waiting for me. Tell me, has it remained loyal in my absence?" For a moment, the hall was silent. Then Vaynar stepped forward, smiling. "Of course, Majesty. We have guarded your throne well. The empire is safe." The emperor's eyes lingered on him, unblinking. "Safe," he repeated. "I will judge that myself." That night, the emperor moved again through the shadows of the palace. He left the throne room behind and slipped into the corridors where the nobles' chambers stood. His cloak covered him, his steps silent. From one of the rooms, faint voices reached his ears. He stopped, listening. "His return was too soon," a voice hissed. "We were not ready. He should have died in war," another voice whispered. "How did he survive?" "The maid still serves him," a third voice said. "If she discovers more, she will ruin everything." The emperor's blood burned. He recognized the voices, nobles and generals who had bowed before him in the council chamber. Their loyalty was a mask, nothing more. He pressed closer, hearing every word. "We must act," Lord Vaynar's voice cut through. "We cannot allow him to live long. But until we strike, we must keep smiling. Let him think we are loyal. Let him believe. And when the time is right, we remove him and take the throne." The emperor's hand gripped his sword hilt, his fury ready to ignite. But he held still. "Not yet. Not tonight." He turned and walked away, his face like stone. Back in his private chamber, the maid was waiting. The relic glowed faintly in her hands. When she saw the emperor's grim face, she bowed deeply. "You heard them, didn't you?" she whispered. The emperor's eyes blazed. "Yes, they dare to breathe betrayal under my roof. They will pay." The maid stepped forward quickly. "Majesty, please, not yet. They expect you to strike in anger. That is what they want. But if you wait, if you let them reveal more, you will see the full circle of traitors. Some you may not even suspect yet." The emperor's rage clashed with his reason. His pride demanded he crush them now, cut them down with his blade. But another part of him, colder and wiser, saw the truth in her words. "You ask me to wait," he said slowly, "while snakes crawl in my halls." "Yes," she whispered, "because when you strike, it must be final. No snake left alive." The emperor stared at her. The flicker of the relic's light danced in his eyes. At last he nodded once. "So be it. I will wait. But when the day comes, there will be no mercy." The days that followed were filled with silence and deceit. The emperor played his role well, smiling in council, nodding to his generals, accepting the false loyalty of his nobles. They believed he was blind. They believed their whispers remained hidden. But the emperor listened. He watched. And through the maid and her relic, more secrets came to light. The circle of traitors was wider than he thought. Some generals, some nobles, even a few guards. They all plotted together, waiting for the chance to strike. The emperor's fury grew sharper, colder. He no longer burned with wild rage. He burned with the quiet fire of a dragon waiting to unleash his breath. At night, when the palace slept, he whispered to himself, "They think me blind. They think me weak. But I see them. And when the time comes, I will tear their shadows apart. The emperor stood before the tall window of his chamber. The night sky spread above the palace like a dark sea. The moon glowed pale, and the city below lay in silence. Yet inside the palace walls, shadows moved, and betrayal breathed. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Golden eyes, sharp, unblinking. He was a ruler, a warrior, a dragon in human form. But now he was also a hunter. His prey wore crowns and silken robes. Behind him, the maid entered quietly, carrying the glowing relic. Her steps were soft, her face tense. They gather again, she whispered. The traitors meet in secret. They believe you see nothing. The emperor did not turn. His voice was low, like fire hidden beneath stone. Let them believe. The more they think me blind, the easier it will be to crush them. The maid lowered her eyes. Majesty, when the time comes, you must strike fast. You must show no hesitation. If you fall, the empire falls with you. The emperor finally turned. His gaze was steady, heavy with promise. I will not fall. I will watch them. I will let them dig their graves with their own hands. And when the moment comes, they will taste my fury. A few days later, Lord Vaynar arranged a grand feast in the palace. The excuse was simple: to celebrate the emperor's safe return. But beneath the music and wine, danger coiled like a snake. The hall glittered with gold and silk. Musicians played, servants moved quickly, nobles laughed too loudly. But the emperor saw through it all. Their smiles were masks, their toasts were lies. Vaynar stood at his side, smiling like a loyal dog. Majesty, tonight all of the empire honors you, he said. The emperor raised his cup, his smile thin. Yes, all of the empire. But his eyes, sharp as blades, studied every face. He counted those who were false. He marked those who were weak. Each one would face judgment. The maid, hidden among the servants, carried the relic under her robes. Its faint light pulsed against her chest, beating like a second heart. Every time a traitor spoke, it glowed brighter, whispering the truth of their words. The emperor's rage grew, but he swallowed it down like bitter wine. Not tonight, not yet. That night, after the feast, the maid brought him the relic again. Its glow was restless, as if it felt the poison in the air. They are close, she said softly. They prepare to strike. Lord Vaynar waits only for the right moment. The emperor sat on the dragon throne, his hand gripping the armrest. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. Let him wait. I will give him the chance to strike. And then, when he bares his fangs, I will break them. The maid trembled. Majesty, it is dangerous. If you let him too close. The emperor raised his hand. Enough. I am not afraid of snakes. I am the fire that burns them. The following evening, Vaynar and his allies gathered again in secret chambers. They believed the emperor was resting, blind to their plots. The feast was a success, Vaynar whispered. He suspects nothing. Soon we will move. Soon, the throne will be ours. The others nodded, greedy smiles spreading across their faces. They spoke of armies, of power, of crowns that would soon rest on their heads. But in the shadows, unseen, the emperor stood listening. He had followed them in silence, his steps like whispers, his presence hidden. Every word carved their guilt deeper. Every word sealed their fate. At last, he turned away, his decision made. The emperor returned to his chamber, his cloak brushing the floor like wings. The maid waited, her hands clasped tightly. You heard them again, she said. Yes, the emperor replied. His voice was calm, but heavy, final. I heard enough. Their game is over. The maid's eyes widened. Then, you will strike now? The emperor looked toward the golden doors of the throne room. His expression was cold, unshaken. No, not yet. Tomorrow I will call the council again. I will let them sit before me, wearing their false smiles. I will let them believe they have won. And then, his voice dropped, sharp as steel. And then I will end it. All of it. The maid shivered. His words carried no doubt, no mercy. The next morning, the palace awoke in nervous silence. Word spread quickly. The emperor had called for the council to gather once more. The nobles dressed in haste, their hearts racing. Some thought this was the moment to strike. Others thought it was only a routine meeting. But all of them walked into the throne room with unease pressing against their chests. The emperor sat high on the dragon throne, his golden eyes unblinking. The maid stood behind him, silent, the relic hidden in her hands. The traitors bowed low, their smiles painted across their faces. Lord Vaynar stepped forward, his voice sweet as honey. "My emperor, the council is honored to serve you again. May we discuss the future of the empire?" The emperor leaned forward slightly. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Yes, let us discuss the future." The nobles relaxed, believing he was fooled, believing the moment was theirs. But the emperor's eyes gleamed with fire. He had already chosen. He had already decided. The chamber fell silent, every noble waiting for the emperor's next words. He rose slowly from the throne, his cloak spreading like the wings of a dragon. His gaze swept across the room, piercing every heart. "My lords," he said, his voice deep and cold, "I have listened. I have watched. I know who among you is true, and who among you is false." Whispers rippled through the hall. Faces turned pale. The emperor's golden eyes narrowed, his fury hidden no longer. Today the masks fall. Today, the truth is revealed. The nobles froze, fear choking their throats. Lord Vaynar's smile faltered for the first time. The emperor lifted his hand, and the hall trembled with the promise of fire.